While we do that, the first thing is just in terms of today. Today is we're here to educate people and to show people what is out there and what is available. Today is not Wealth Migrate offering advice, so they just have to quickly make that disclaimer so that you understand that. For today, we are going to be using some technology in order to ask questions. So there are often people who say, gee, I think that's a really stupid question, so you don't want to put your hand up and ask it. So we're going to be using a system called Slido. So if you go to your phones, first of all, the Wi-Fi is just River Club Wi-Fi. It's open. You don't need to worry about it. It is open. On the side here, you'll see this is slido.com. So if you go to slido.com and you type in invest in the hashtag over there and click join, you will then be able to actually type questions into Slido. You can ask those questions anonymously, or you can put your name in if you really want to. And so you can ask questions on that. We will be checking that periodically and answering those questions, as well as general questions by raising your hand saying, I have a question. That'll work as well. Or if you really want to write it on a piece of paper and hand it to someone, I guess that'll work too. But please do use Slido. It really works really well. In terms of paper, what you'll notice is on the table there is a current opportunities sheet, but then underneath that is an investment strategy sheet, a feedback form. So the reason we have that on the table is because we really need to know what you need so that we can help you in the best way possible. So please fill that in after tea time so that so that you can then hand it back to one of the people from Wealth Migrate who are wearing the name tags. In terms of how many people here are staying for the whole day? Okay, so we will be breaking, most likely in the other venues we've broken at about 1:00, and the slug and lettuce is here if you really want a big meal. There will be finger snacks at 1:00 for the people who are staying in the afternoon. Then the last thing is just we have on the Wealth Migrate Facebook page, there is a post for the event today. What will happen is any links or any content that Scott or Willem this afternoon share, we'll be putting up on that Facebook page, so that at the end of the event, if there's something you missed, you didn't write down the name of a book, or you didn't write down the link to a site around property, then you can actually go back to that Facebook page and you can find the link there. You can also then easily share that with people who couldn't be here today. So just go to the Wealth Migrate Facebook page, and there will be a post that'll say Cape Town event, and everything will be underneath that. Okay, great. So without further ado, we'll invite up Scott. Scott, of course, is the CEO of Wealth Migrate. Scott has... Oh, that's interesting. You can fix that, Scott. Scott, of course, has a major passion around both technology and real estate, and he's been doing that, he'll tell you, since he was a kid. And Wealth Migrate really believe that through the power of technology and the wealth creation power of real estate, the wealth gap can be closed, and that is the passion that we have. So, Scott, over to you, and we look forward to what you're going to share today.
Okay, so we're going to play a little game today. There's no such thing as stupid questions or interaction. You can't make a fool of yourself. I'll do enough of making a fool for all of us, if that's fair. Yeah? So what do you think of a workshop? Interactive? Okay, great. That's one of the words I was looking for. What else? Education? Work? Networking? Learning? One of the people joked in Johannesburg, I work and you shop. The one that I like is, if you just Google it, the all-knowing Google, a meeting of which a group of people engage in intensive discussion and activity on a particular subject or project. So can we agree in intensive discussion? Okay, now a discussion is not a one-way conversation. Is that fair? So we got feedback in March when Willem and I tried to present. I know Vu and a couple of others were in the room, Howard as well. And literally the feedback we had, it was like trying to drink from a fire hose in terms of the amount of information. So what we've done today is we've split it up. We've got property in the morning, we've got technology in the afternoon. We've purposely made more time so that we can have conversation. Is that fair? So we really respect your time, and we understand that time is your most important asset. But if we're going to get the most out of today, then the most important thing you need to know is why you're here. Is that fair? So what I want you to do quickly is just take 30 seconds and write down why you're here. Because, quite frankly, it's different for everyone. You can't get it wrong, because otherwise you're not sure why you came. And just write down why you're here today. So from my perspective, why I'm here today, I actually had a very funny story this morning. You know, we're quite close to the hospital just nearby here. What's it called? I forget its name. What's it called? No, not Grooteskier. Falkenberg, the one that's a bit closer. So I woke up this morning and I went for a run, which is what I try and do most mornings. And I literally was running down the road. It was just after 6. It was still pitch black. And there was literally a gentleman. There were 2 manholes, and the manhole cover of the one was off. And there was a gentleman there doing push-ups, and then he started doing sit-ups and shouting at the top of his voice. I was like, not sure if I wanted to start the day by being murdered by some guy that had managed to escape. So it was very weird, okay? So I went back to the hotel, and I said, is there anywhere to run around here? And they went, yeah, pretty much down that road. I was like, yeah, we've got a bit of a problem down that road. Anyway, I decided we're going to talk a lot about risk today. I decided to do some of my risk analogy, which I'll explain later. So I went back down the road, because I had to go for a run. And the guy was gone, and the manhole was closed. You can't tell me that's not a bit freaky. Because I don't know about roadworks people that work at like 6:20 in the morning. And people were like, maybe he escaped. I'm like, no, I don't think he didn't look like he wanted to escape. I think that's his morning routine. He wakes up, goes out the manhole, does his stuff, and goes back down the manhole, back to the hospital. But why I'm here is to have lots of fun today. My mission statement in life is to create a world of wealth, health, and happiness by having lots of fun and inspiring growth and change. And so in that vein, I'm going to actually take off my jacket because I can't work and workshop with the jacket on, because I basically want to have some fun. We're going to have some jokes. We're going to have some interaction. I wanted to start with a story. So it was the 31st of May, probably 1983, and there was a little young boy with his brother, and they used to go up to a road called Old Main Road, and it was quite an exciting day in the South African calendar, where a bunch of people would run from Durban to Pietermaritzburg or the other way around. And when you live in Kloof, it was a really exciting day. I don't know why we found it so exciting, but we'd run around and we'd pick up the sponges, and then we'd find it hell of a funny, if they were doing the up run, to say, don't worry, only 70 kilometers to go, and that sort of thing. And at a very young age, probably 6 or 7 years old, I decided to do the comrades. Now what was interesting is that at the time I didn't know that I was going to grow up to be a little fat hooker rather than Bruce Fordyce. Okay, so that was a bit of a challenge. But anyway, I got to about 20, and I literally said to my brother, who's a doctor, actually a Grooteskier, please go chat to Tim Noakes and ask him what age I should run comrades. And he pretty much came back and he said, no, it's fine, do it around 30. I was like, oh, excellent, I've got another decade to wait. But in 2008, I hit 30. And so it was time to run this race. So, I literally didn't really listen to anyone. There's obviously quite a few rules that you should do. I didn't listen to them. I did a bit of training, put my shoes on, and off I went on that day. And I got to about Kearsney College, which is about 31, 32 Ks into the race. And I started to cramp. I went a bit further. I managed to get all the way to Cato Ridge, which was about 63 Ks. And by then I cramped in both my quads, my hammies, my calves, and my stomach, all at the same time. And I couldn't get from here to that camera. Now that was quite a daunting thing for me, because I've always been kind of power over the mind, the mind over matter, all that sort of stuff. And this was very much body in control. Like I couldn't go anywhere. So I did the maths, and to finish the race, I needed to run at about 8 minutes a kilometer, and I was doing about 14 minutes a kilometer. And who's run Comrades here, just by the way? Anyone? One person. Interesting. Doesn't seem as popular as it used to be. Anyway, if you watch Comrades, you'll know you kind of go off into the chicken farms. And I basically had a decision as I went across the highway. Like I could pull out then, or I could try to keep going, but if I failed, I was going to then go in that bus, which is like the bus of shame, where you have to kind of sit with a bunch of other people and everyone goes, oh, shame, those guys didn't finish. And so I thought, no, I'm going to bail myself. So I went down to the side of the road, and it was one of the more humbling experiences of my life, standing on the side of the road, the highway, the national N3 highway, with your running gear on, your number, and you're waiting for your wife on the telephone, right? So I'm a big believer in life that what you do, it doesn't matter if you fail, as long as you're clear on what you want and you keep going. Hi, Mom. Time management wasn't something I was taught at a young age, so what happened was I came back in 2009, and I thought I'd do it a little bit differently. So the first thing I did was I went and found someone that had actually run Comrades before, and went and asked them, what I could learn from them. And rather than, in the first year, I was told to really take it slow in the beginning. And the gentleman in the back will know what I'm talking about, where you kind of walk, you actually run for like 6 minutes, and you walk for 1 minute, run for 6 minutes, walk for 1 minute. Now, for the first 20 Ks, when I first ran Comrades, I didn't do that. I literally thought to myself, Bruce Fordyce, you better be careful of your record, because I'm going to club this thing. But now with getting some advice, I kind of listened to someone who'd been there, done that, and followed it. The second thing I did was that I didn't listen to all the dietitians, but I did go and find someone that gave me a little salt pill that I could put under my tongue. And that actually just helped me stop cramping. And the third thing that I did was get very clear on my goal. Because in the first year, as I just said to you, I wasn't sure if I was going to finish or get a gold medal. In the second year, I was very clear what I wanted to finish. That was it. Very simple, very clean. And I finished the down run in 11 hours and 39 minutes, which is, some people would call not finishing, actually, if you're a true Durban boy, because it's supposed to be under 11 hours, but anyway. But they changed it to 12, so I play within the new rules. And then 2010 was the down run again, because we had the Soccer World Cup. So in 2011, it was time to take on the up run. Now, if you're from Durban, you'll know that if you haven't run the up and the down, it doesn't count. Okay, and anyone that tells you that running up a hill is easier than running down a hill are the same people that tell you on a wedding day when it rains it's good luck. It's BS. So for me, the up run was always more of a challenge. But what happened to me in 2011 was that I actually got to about Kersney again, and I could feel the twinges of a cramp coming on, but I didn't get them. I managed them all the way through to the end. And I actually finished, and you'll see here is a picture of me finishing in 11 hours and 55 minutes and 36 seconds, which for time management is phenomenal. That's 4 minutes and 34 seconds that I left myself over 87 kilometers to. But I finished. I achieved the goal. And really for me, I think today, why I started off with that story, because it has absolutely nothing to do with property, is that for me it sums up the three things we're trying to achieve today. The first one is that I went and I learned from someone that had been there, done that, got the t-shirt. There's people out there that have achieved things, and we can learn a huge amount from them and not have to make all the same mistakes ourselves. Is that fair? Secondly, I found that little salt pill, and literally the application of putting it under my tongue, a system, helped me achieve the goal. And thirdly, the most important thing was the goal was to get 1 up and 1 down medal. No more, no less. And for me, I did what it took to get the goal. Now, why is that important to today, and why did I ask you to start off by what do you want out of today? because I'm very clear in my life that if you are clear what you want, then you can get there. However, it's not always easy. And you will probably fail along the way. Is that fair? So for today, that's why I asked you to write it down, because the clearer you get on what you want, the clearer you'll get there. Now, Kevin very politely used the disclaimer, we're not giving advice. I want to be a little bit more direct. I believe that today is all about empowering you to make your decisions. I fundamentally believe that the financial industry and the education system has brainwashed us into thinking that you're stupid and someone else is clever, and they're going to tell you what to do. And today, if you think that anyone in this room is cleverer than you, then that's a major problem. Because today is not about giving you advice. Today is about helping you so that you can make the right decisions for yourself. I fundamentally believe the 21st century has completely changed. We are all in control of our destiny, but therefore we're also accountable for our decisions. Is that fair? That's a nicer way of reading a disclaimer. Hey, Kevin? Yeah. No, but for me, it's got nothing to do with the disclaimer. It's actually about a fundamental belief. So let's rock and roll. So as a matter of interest, anyone want to share one of the reasons why you were here? Because quite frankly, I can talk about this topic for 3 days. I love it, okay? But if you give me guidance as to why you're here, I can be more focused in terms of the areas you want me to focus on. So anyone want to share what do you want to get out of today? Anyone? Don't all shout at once. I battle with the English, Afrikaans, and Zulu at the same time.
Yes, I'd like to know more about the GIBS system and also how different countries stack up against each other.
Okay, so I'd like to know more about the GIDS system, it's our global investment due diligence system. We're excited today to unveil to Cape Town GIDS 2.0, which is the whole extra leg. And then, yes, debate the different countries and the pros and cons between them. So fair enough? Anyone else? Yep.
Find more investment opportunities with the limited funds that I've got available.
Okay, great. So look for opportunities, both locally and offshore. Yep. Okay.
Going forward with blockchain technology.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So are you staying this afternoon?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. We actually did in Johannesburg, but we didn't do it in KZN. And over lunch, we actually had Jaco run a little blockchain thing over lunch, literally in the front. Who would be interested in knowing more about blockchain? Okay, Jaco. Where is Jaco? Okay, just don't duck over lunch like you did in Durban, okay? Because there's about 20 or 30 people that would like to redo that. So over lunch, we'll literally just talk. We're going to talk a lot about it, but Jaco deep dived about a year ago into blockchain, and we literally have live blockchain, one of the first in the world. I'm going to show it to you, but Jaco was the architect in terms of that logic. Anyone else? Yep.
Just want to find out how to invest in the States.
Okay, so how to invest in the States? Fantastic.
How to use real estate citizen in
Cool. That's an interesting question. We get that often. How do you use real estate to become a citizen of another country? Something I challenge people as well. I live in South Africa. I love living in South Africa. But I also believe you can use real estate to help you become a global citizen, which means that you could stay here if you choose to, or move if you choose to, but you don't have to necessarily live where your money lives. It's just a mindset thing that I like. Okay, one more. One at the right at the back. Yes, Annalise. Great, so if I understand the question, it's how do we gauge different investments? How do we compare one with the other? Is that fair? And then I want to take that one step further because I think the world's changing. Just because a big financial institution can put a beautiful big advert on Newlands Stadium doesn't necessarily mean that a product for you is the exact right product for you. Is that fair? So where I think the world's going is not only gauging investments, but then also being able to personalize them for what you want. So as an example, you wanted to be able to possibly be able to live somewhere else. That might be different from someone that's purely looking for a cash flow return. So for me, it's the personalization in that process. Let's take one more and then I'll crack on. Anyone else? Nope, no more one-mores. So this is a long list. I'm not going to read through all of them. But having helped people invest overseas for more than 10 years now out of South Africa, these are some of them that I've seen over the years. Making your money work harder, hedge against the rand, preserving assets and wealth. It's what we call wealth preservation. Having the peace of mind and knowing that you've got a plan B. Immigration, we just spoke about. This institutional, institutional grade due diligence we're going to go through. How Wealth Migrate makes money. We get this all the time. People are like, you don't run a charity. Why are you doing this? Is that fair? So just by the way, I know there's a lot of talks going on around the country. I just want to kind of put your mind at ease. At no point are you going to be able to run to the back of the room and buy a book. At no point are you going to run to the back of the room and be sold a coaching course. And there's no consulting or anything that we're going to try and sell you. And most importantly, we don't have a course on the weekend for a discounted amount of money if you sign up today. So I can put your mind at ease. So let's rather just get straight deep dive into why we're doing this. Because everyone's like, it must be because you really want to make money. And I'm like, yeah, for 200 Rand, I'm killing it. So for 200 Rand, it's like the teas and coffees, literally. Is that fair? So why are we doing it? Guys, we're doing it because we care, and we're doing it because we fundamentally believe that if we empower people to be able to make their own decisions, then they will go out and be successful in their lives. We believe we've got a solution that people would like, but if you walk out here and never talk to us again, I actually don't care. I think you might come back to talk to us eventually, but our fundamental belief out of today is about sharing and empowering people. So this morning is all about empowering about property, and this afternoon is all about technology. But is that fair to understand our intention in terms of where we're at? There's another reason we charge 200 Rand, just so that people know. Often people that pay attention. And they turn up. I'm serious, there's nothing more irritating than when 200 people book and 50 turn up. So it just makes it a bit easier. Okay, right, one last thing I just wanted to show is two things down here. For those of you that are wealth partners, you'll actually see them. They're wearing black lanyards who are effectively shareholders in our group. And for me, one of the most exciting things on the journey we've been on the last couple of years is the global community. So sharing with like-minded people. And the one that I'm most passionate about is about being a global citizen. And what I mean by that is that, if we come back to the immigration option, I fundamentally believe that if you've got overseas assets, like as in first world income and first world assets, and you've got access in your mind to the latest technologies, I fundamentally believe you're a global citizen. You can live anywhere you want in the world. Because you can buy your way into any country, and or you can add enough value to a country to be able to move. Is that fair? And if you look at today, just to put that in perspective, there's a young lady, 22 years old, who's Henny's daughter. 6 years ago, she was at an event like this. Her dad said to her, go learn about exponential technologies. She did her dissertation at Stellenbosch on exponential technologies. She did a short course at Stanford. When she left Stellenbosch at the end of last year, she was given 10 jobs, 10 job offers. How many students leave university and get 10 job offers? Okay. Now, what's interesting is she's a typical millennial. She's already resigned and taken up a very good job at Capitec to help them with the future of banking. Do you think she could get a job in London, Shanghai, Sydney, New York, or anywhere else in the world? That's what I mean by being a global citizen. So, 4 Secrets of Wealth. This book is the first book that I would highly recommend. It's called Unshakable by Tony Robbins. Anyone read this? Yep. Who is Tony Robbins? Okay, so personal development. Anyone else want to share who's Tony Robbins? Who's heard of Tony Robbins? Okay, life coach. So what's interesting is most people know him as a life coach, but he's actually, and he's coached the Andre Agassiz of the world and Princess Diana. And Kevin mentioned the other day, he helped Bill Clinton when he was getting impeached. But I think that's not actually the only thing about him. He's also worked with some of the best business leaders in the world. I've been on his course. It fundamentally changed the direction of my business. I know Jaco's done it, Michiel's done it. But what's interesting as well is that he's been working with some of the wealthiest people in the world. Because we know about the Andre Agassiz, but we don't necessarily know about the financial people and how he's coached them. So he got really upset in 2008, 2009, 2010, when the American housing market lost 70%, and most Americans found themselves in really a difficult state. And he wrote a book called Money Master the Game that, I couldn't finish because it was over 700 pages long. And I think the feedback that he got from everyone was write a shorter book, which is that one. It's about 200 pages. And the best way to summarize that book is I've tried to put it into four 4 little points, which is what we're basically going to be running through today. The first one is don't lose money. Who knows what Warren Buffett's investment philosophy is? Yep. Okay, buy and hold. But there's one thing he talks about a lot, basically, which is don't lose money. And if you point number 2 is refer to point number 1. Literally, so the very first thing is that, what the hell is going on there? Okay, well, I know what point number 2 is. You guys don't. We can all go home now. So would you mind just, it's actually crashing. I might have to restart the whole machine. I'll try one more time. If it crashes again, I'll restart the whole thing. So the second point is make sure that you've got asymmetric risk reward. Now, that's quite an interesting one, because what are we taught at school and at university? High risk, high return, yes? Whereas actually, I've had the privilege of learning this personally over the last 15, 20 years. Actually, the wealthiest people have low risk, high return. So why are we all being taught to have high risk, high return? You've got to ask yourself the question. So asymmetric risk reward is trying to make sure that your risks are low and that your returns are higher. The third one is tax. How do you manage your taxes efficiently? So we had a gentleman in Durban who's been investing overseas for 30 years, and his number one reason he came was to understand about tax. Because for 30 odd years, he's been trying to understand how to get an offshore structure, what offshore structure, how do you do it efficiently? I'm very grateful, thank you, Kevin. I'm very grateful that with our team, and we've really been privileged to have a strong team that's been put together, we're getting some of the wealthier people that have very complicated structures actually unbundling their structures and now just running their investments through the platform, because it's efficient from a tax perspective, and actually it's just taking the complexity out of their lives, the complexity and the cost. So again, I'm not a tax expert. I'm not going to sit here today and sound like a tax expert, but you want to make sure you're tax efficient. And the fourth one, which is one a lot of South Africans talk about, but diversify across asset classes, diversify within asset classes, diversify across markets and currencies, and diversify across time. So quick one, diversify across asset classes. If you own a house in Cape Town and you own an apartment in Century City, have you diversified across asset classes? If you own a house in Cape Town and a house in Johannesburg, have you diversified across asset classes? No? What about diversified within asset classes? So again, if you've got a property and let's do a better one. If you've got money invested in the stock market and you invest in a REIT, a real estate investment trust, basically a property fund, have you diversified across the asset classes? You think so? Who thinks that if you invest in a REIT versus the stock market, you've diversified? Can I see your left hand? Okay. Who doesn't think so? Who has absolutely no idea what I'm talking about? So basically for me, we've done the research, and there's more than a 70% correlation between a REIT and the stock market. So even though it's a financial instrument that is underlined by property, it has a much stronger correlation to the stock market than it does to direct property. Now, you can love me, you can hate me, you can argue with me, but you can't fight with the facts. Does that make sense? So that's an interesting one. So again, if sentiment in New York goes down and the stock market goes down in New York, does the JSE goes down? Yes? So do REITs values go up or down based on the value of their net underlying assets, or based on sentiment? Diversify across markets and currencies. I don't think for South Africans we have to explain that one too much. Maybe for an American, just in America you do, but for South Africans I think we kind of get that one. And then interestingly enough, diversify across time. So I was flying to, I thought it was last week, I think to Joburg, and I met a lady, and really interesting lady. I don't normally talk to people on the airplane. It's like my 1 hour of quietness. But for some reason she just started talking to me about property. And she said she really thinks that garages, garages where you park cars, are like the way of the future, like to make money. I was like, okay, what do you think of autonomous cars? No, she doesn't think that's going to have an impact. Okay. Then the next thing was she thinks shopping centers are going to be the way of the future. I actually have a slide, believe it or not, on shopping centers. Because literally in America, like shopping centers, there's a huge amount of them going bankrupt because of e-commerce. And what was fascinating to me is her response to me was, yeah, but that's America. It'll never happen in Africa. So while we were riding ox wagons, Henry Ford invented cars. They never came here, though. So this is a Ray Dalio. I'd go look him up after this if you haven't heard of him. He's one of the 50 most recognized traders in the world. And he wrote this, and it pretty much sums up this whole book. You need to try and find 15 uncorrelated bets, an array of attractive assets that don't move in tandem, and if you do that, it'll reduce your risk by 80%, and your risk-return ratio will increase by a factor of 5. So quickly, I've done all the talking so far. Please just turn to someone, so like the two of you can chat, you can turn around and chat with her, or Villy can come join you. You're an attractive young lady, Villy always likes to talk to. But just get into groups of like 2 or 3, and just chat. What does that actually mean? Because if you have no idea what that means, I'm sure the person next to you also probably feels the same way. Just chat what you think it means. I don't know why the PowerPoint is crashing. It's happened to me before. The only way I solved it was to restart the whole machine, which I try not to, but if it does go again, I'll just restart the whole thing. Yeah, but I've got all the ads. So I just didn't start it again, so it's been running for a whole week, like. Yeah. Guys, there's plenty of seats in the front if you want to go, huh? You will?
No, all good.
There's plenty of spots up front, though. Guys, please can you just ask them? Anyone want to share? What do you guys think? Anyone want to share? No one. we got one. I think it's a very valid point. So, struggle to find more than 5 that are uncorrelated. And I do believe that you're right in the sense that the world is getting more and more interconnected, and therefore things are, tied together. So I take that. There was another comment in Johannesburg, actually the gentleman that was literally sitting here, and what he said is that makes a lot of sense if you're a millionaire in dollars. But, for the average investor, there's literally like only 5, 10 things you can even do that you even have access to. I'd like to fundamentally believe today we can change that for people. We'll show you how. But I do take your point. I think it's valid. Anything else?
On that comment, for me, the 15, obviously, I think it's possible. It just depends on your exposure. What are you exposed to? Some people don't know that there are tradable commodities that are out there. So if you're not exposed to that, you don't know how you can invest in a farm that maybe is the biggest grain grower in the country, and you had access and opportunity to be part of that investment. If you don't know, you don't know, so you're not going to be able to make a kind of uncorrelated investment. If you're exposed to real estate, you're exposed to equities, you're exposed to basic forms of investment, or cash through money markets or cash through pension funds. If that's what you're exposed to, you're going to be really limited to your access. So I think it becomes applicable when you have a wide a wider perspective around what does an investment environment look like, and what do you know, or what do you feel most comfortable with?
Completely agree with you. And I think, the other thing is that in the old days, and I mean the old days being like a year ago, if you came to me and said, well, we should invest in a farm, and it's the biggest grain producer in the world. And I'm like, awesome, how do I do that? No, you have to buy the farm. Oh, I don't have enough money to buy the farm. Do you know what I mean? So I think also it's a gap between not only knowledge but also access. The other thing that, for me is if I sit back and I say to someone, well, why don't you invest in a commercial building? All wealthy people generally invest in commercial. Why are you not investing in commercial? And generally my attitude's been, well, because I don't have 30% just for the deposit, which is generally a couple of million rand, if not a couple of $1 million, depending on where you're investing. So just, it might be, hey, I know I should buy a commercial building, but I can't. Do you mean? I believe the rules of the game are changing. So not only is the knowledge becoming more accessible, but so is the accessibility, which I think we'll go into. So just quickly, I think it's a very good point, Vu. Just my take on this, and again, please understand that today this is my opinion. What you take out of it today is your opinion. But for me, 15 uncorrelated bets is effectively 15 different investments that are in an attractive assets, okay, so obviously looking for 15 good investments that don't move in tandem. So you want to be looking for things that are in different markets that granted, I believe probably a lot of things are interlinked, but as an example, things like Bitcoin as well are starting to come up. We're going to talk about Bitcoin this afternoon. And then if we just do that, so if we can find 15 assets that don't move in tandem, we reduce our risk by 80% and our risk return by a factor of 5. So basically it means our risk goes down and our return goes up by more than 5, which you could look at being 500% if you want to. Does that make sense? Yeah? So my challenge to all of you, and this is why I started off with this, if you walk out of here today just understanding this, and possibly having the hope that there's now solutions to be able to do this for yourself, I believe it's going to make a big difference in your life. Right, so some of the investment types, I'm not going to get into all the details here, but really for me, the first 4, bank products, financial products, bonds, and stocks, I know nothing about. I'm serious. So I believe a lot in Malcolm Gladwell's kind of focus where if you really want to learn about something, you're going to need at least 10 years plus to be able to invest. Does that make sense? So I tend to, those 4 I don't know anything about. I know my mother's in the room, so I'll choose my words carefully. But I did write about my personal experience in chapter 1 of my book, where my dad, left as the financial director of Rainbow Chickens, and we invested like 500,000 rand of his pension money with the financial industry. And when he died, my mom got the sum total of 480,000 rand, which was a phenomenal achievement by the financial industry over a 10-year period. And I guarantee you that people earn fees all the way through the process. So for me, if I am biased, you can read about why. But what's important here, we're going to talk about REITs, funds, and syndication. Don't get me wrong, people make money in the stock market. This is just not the day to go through that, if that's fair. And really what we're going to focus on today is real estate, but direct property in residential and commercial. I could put Bitcoins on here because Willem's coming later and knows a lot about Bitcoin. I do have a lot of miss-out syndrome. You'll understand why when you hear from him later this afternoon. So some of the barriers people face, there's going to be a lot of voices going on in your head. And if any of these pop up that are on the screen, then please just understand that it's normal. So, how do I protect myself? Sounds too good to be true. Access to deals and partners. I don't have the access. There are lots of scams out there. I don't know how. It's too complicated. Time and effort, ongoing management. It was really interesting. This weekend, I've always thought residential was a really good investment. And then with South Africa, I've just consistently had problems. And we've been selling off, my wife and I have been selling off our South African properties. But I really thought my London properties were good properties. Until this weekend, I got a call on the Saturday because the bloody boiler broke. I was at a braai trying to have fun. And then yesterday I got a call because something else leaked. I was like, these residential things aren't so much fun anymore. So the management agent might have to move on. But the right structures, and I don't have the time. So if any of this is coming to your head, it's normal. Now, just in my interest, who here got Property is just the vehicle. Tax compliance, bank accounts, and structures. This one continues to confuse me. I'm now onto my 4th offshore investment as an offshore structure. I tried to save money. There's a company called Sovereign that's very big and expensive. So I tried to save money, and I went to a company called One Tax. Anyone know Philip Viviers? Yeah? Do you know where he is? Is he? Could you help me find him? Because I set up an offshore structure in an island, I don't know where it is. I just didn't realize he was the one in One Tax, and then disappeared. Yeah, no, he's dead missing. He's the whatever on my trust, the founder or whatever on my trust, he's gone. Just like physically disappeared. So, you know, like I've learned so many lessons, both good and bad, and some of them didn't even involve money. But I'm dead serious. Century City. I'm not sure if Robbie did it or if John Robbie bought it off someone else, but someone, Monix. Okay, so he bought off Monix, okay? So Monix took the time to go and buy all the basically farmland or whatever it was, okay, and get the zoning to turn it into where you can effectively build buildings. Is that fair? So that's called land zoning, and it can take years. Is that fair? Then you have the developer come along, Robbie, and they're going to build something. They're going to basically build a vertical structure. They're going to create value. Then you have the investor. So the investor can be an individual, can be you when you buy a house, or it can be a company that buys a shopping center. And very often the developer and the investor are the same person. Is that fair? But what they do is they put a tenant in the building and they start to what they call season the rents, which means they basically start to show centers, and the whole article was about how the fund was paying too much money for the properties. But who's putting their money into Rebosis? Whose money actually is it? It's ours. It's pension funds. It doesn't matter which way you prioritize. It's people's money. So, guys, the biggest lesson that I've ever learned is that the wealthiest people, the only way that I've seen people make significant money out of property is where they are part of this part of the chain and they sell it to this part of the chain. That's where significant money is made in the value chain of real estate. Now, we spoke this morning about why I could phone him to find where I was, and this whole thing would go on for about 2 hours. Do you remember those days? All of about 2 years ago. And then what happened is Uber came along, and now I literally take out my cell phone, it puts me in contact with a dude. 2 minutes later, he picks me up, all using Google Maps. Off we go. I don't have to worry. If he takes me to Cape Town Airport, he doesn't take me via Hout Bay. I'm serious, because if you don't know where you're going, they would always take you off. You would never, ever be able to have any sort of consequence against them. You would pay them cash or credit card, whatever. You could never find them again. Who here has ever left something in an Uber taxi? Yep. What was your experience?
I've done it twice, and both times they've delivered it straight back to me.
Do you know in some of the rooms, no one's put their hand up, but you've actually done it twice, which is amazing. Like, it's a good feat. But no, I've also done it twice to make you feel better. Same thing, I got it back, okay? Why? Because in Uber, like, you know the driver, they know you, they can get in contact, they know if they don't give it back to you, it was in the car, you know, that sort of thing, okay? So as a matter of interest, who here has been picked up by a lady at night in South Africa driving an Uber taxi? Yeah, I have, at least 5 times. Now, 5 years ago, what would be the chances of a lady in South Africa picking up men at night in a car to go from a random place from A to B, not knowing who they were picking up? Like 0. Yeah? What about, I live in Knysna, and we rent out, we've got a little granny flat, we rent it out. So I'm here with you guys, and we've got some strangers living in my house right now. What could happen to my wife and child? And 5 years ago, would you let strangers into your house so you could make a bit of extra money? Airbnb. So you see, the world's changing, basically. And we'll talk a lot about risk just now. But all that we really did with our technology is that we just believe that we help people invest directly in income through technology. And we help people invest directly with the developer, which is what we call growth. So we literally just have 2 different things. We've got income and we've got growth. We have done land. In fact, we've got 200 and something land lots in Atlanta. Quite frankly, for me, there can be a lot of money made here, but it doesn't produce an income. So we tend to try and focus on those 2 segments. So if I look at these 2 in simple terms, people read, the pictures. What the hell's going on there? If I press the red button, it goes to the next page. That's bizarre. So can I just swap this over? But these 2 medical buildings are 2 medical buildings in Atlanta. I've got one in the other bag there, Kevin. Yeah, in the front there. And so it's really important to understand, just on income, it's really simple, guys. It's an existing building that has tenants that pays an income. Is that fair? So from a risk perspective, it's not maybe coming. It's not if we find a tenant. It's an existing building. In the exact same way, just using technology to make it more efficient. Does that make sense? Like, if you think at any point here we're trying to overcomplicate the process, it's actually the other way around. We're trying to simplify the process. So it's no different from you and me saying, hey, that's a nice building, medical building in America. Let's go and buy it. We need to set up a structure. We need to agree how much money we're going to put in. We need to agree who's going to manage it, get the mortgage, and then what exit we're going to look at. So we tend to look at, just so that you know, we tend to look at 5-year exits. Because we believe that if you're going to buy a good asset, you need to be in the market for a while to benefit from the asset. We also like to look, when we look at properties, for at least 3 exits. So for, yep?
Why do you own 5 if why not they stay there for 10?
Good question. I'm going to answer that for you now, okay? So it's fascinating, actually. Generally, the more sophisticated people are, the longer they want the property, and the less sophisticated they are, the shorter they want it. It's amazing. All over the world, not just in South Africa, same in China, everywhere else. So for me, what we say is that there's 3 exit strategies. The one exit strategy is the one we like least, which is you just take an existing building and you just sell it in the open market. Okay? The second one, particularly when it comes to these medical buildings, one of the exit strategies we're working on is that we like to buy buildings where the amount of money needed is roughly between $1 million and $10 million. I'm talking cash, okay? So like the 35% equity portion, and then we borrow 65% from the bank. Is that fair? Yep. But more importantly, the money amount is like $1 to $10 million, which means we're buying buildings and portfolios in the region of, say, 15 to 25 million. Is that fair? Now, why we do that is that it's too much money for the small guy. Sweet spot of buildings that are too big for the small guy and too small for the big guy. So coming back to our second exit strategy is that if you can put together a portfolio of assets that are normally $100 million or more, and it's got good consistent income, who buys it from you? The fund and the REIT. So we're already now over $100 million in medical buildings in America. We've got 29 buildings already. And one of the exit strategies, which has been the exit strategy for more than 3 years, is talking to the investors and saying, hey guys, if we put these all together and sell them to a REIT, and if it makes financial sense, let's do it. Now, the one thing to answer your question, some people don't want to sell a property, but everyone's a seller at a price, at a certain price. Does that make sense? So if they're willing to buy it off us for a stupid price, well, we will happily sell it. Does that make sense? So that's the second one. The third one's coming back to your question, which is where if someone wants to exit in 5 years, is we actually refinance the property, buy them out, pay them the return as exactly if they sold it, and we actually hold the asset, we being whoever the collective we is, because you've got a good quality asset with a good quality tenant paying you a good quality cash flow, why sell it? But you need to provide people the liquidity, because if we agreed to get in a deal and you want to get out in 5 years, we've got to agree to let you out. Does that make sense? So, hopefully you understand from an income perspective where we're at there. What do I do with that thing? Thanks. The second one is growth. So you might or might not have seen, but the tallest building that's being built in Cape Town, called 0 to 1, is going to be down there in the CBD. And this is a classic growth opportunity. It's a new development. If you go down there right now, if you drive down to the CBD, it doesn't exist. But the potential is to partner with the developer, build the building, and then make an exit, make a return on exit. Is that fair? Now, just in my interest, someone asked me, do I get a monthly or quarterly return when I'm doing that? And I said to them, guys, if I was paying you a return, I'd be running a Ponzi scheme. Because there's no income. So how could I pay you income? Do you see the logic? So it's just, for me, the biggest thing I've learned in investing is dumb it down to simple things. Like, how do we pay an income on a medical building? Well, because there's a tenant paying an income. Does that make sense? And it's not us actually paying the income, it's the building paying you the income. Is that fair? Okay, so, this is obviously the new development opportunities. Obviously, has anyone ever here met a developer that finishes on time within cost? Okay, so people would argue that the development cycle has higher I'll explain this side just now. Local versus offshore. So this, I'm really going to kind of simplify this. But when I look at local versus offshore, local, generally the returns have actually been higher over the last couple of years. The property is tough. So what I mean by that is that to invest offshore is really difficult. To do it locally is actually easier, certainly to get started. I don't believe my local properties give me peace of mind. And that's not just a financial return peace of mind, a flipping headache to try and manage them. Financial planning, maybe. A rand hedge, no. And diversification, no. So I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I do believe in diversifying. And this is why. When you look at the advantages of international property, you've got wealth preservation, rand hedge, first world income and assets. You can be far more tax efficient in both America and Australia. They've got very good tax regimes. You can build a credit rating. You can diversify. You can have peace of mind. Plan B, possible immigration, like we spoke earlier. And actually what's interesting, in the last 5 or 6 years, you're getting comparable returns in the first world from what you can even get in South Africa. Like literally an 8% cash-on-cash return in US dollars. It's hard to get an 8% return here, cash-on-cash in rand, in commercial building. Am I right or wrong? Anyone disagree? Sure. Guys, when I was in Durban, I thought maybe when I was in Joburg, I thought maybe it's because everyone spoke Afrikaans and didn't understand me. When I was in Durban, because I was a Sharks supporter, they really kind of, we're warm and friendly. Is it because I'm a Sharks supporter that I'm battling to get so He's now passed away, but he was the writer for the Financial Mail for property. Amazing guy. And he said to me, control the variables. So, do I know if the rand is going to go up or down against the dollar tomorrow? I don't. If anyone else does, let me know. But the point being is that, and do I know if asset values are going to go up or down over the next 5 years? I don't. But what I do know is that if we're going to buy this building, and exactly what the building is, exactly what the exchange rate is, and exactly what the return is, I know what the variables are today. And I really think it's a big lesson I learned from Ian Fife is that a lot of people try and wait for tomorrow, hoping, but then you're not controlling the variables. Then you're just at life's mercy. Does that make sense? Versus actually saying, I know the numbers make sense to me today, and then I get to control the variables. Is that fair? There's opportunities that need capital to unlock them. And then one that scares me a little bit is that at the end of March, when we had the whole finance minister getting kicked out, although I have to say, it's been quite encouraging what's been happening since then. But they were actually talking that they might take away our FDI allowance, our foreign direct investment allowance. So, I don't know, call it hearsay, call it whatever you like, but I don't like hearing that. The pitfalls of investing offshore, a lot of people have the wrong information. So, I'm not sure if anyone here in the room has done this. I've met a few people that go on London for holiday for a week. And, they're there with the family and the children. And on Tuesday, they slip out the hotel quickly to go find a local estate agent. They buy a property. They come home. And then they wonder why it wasn't a good opportunity. I won't. Box here, and it's got 3 reports actually. So the 5 laws to building wealth through real estate, the 5 keys to offshore real estate investment, and the 4 ways to expand your portfolio globally. Morning, guys. This one is really for people that are starting out and want to learn how to build wealth in real estate. This one's for intermediate people that want to know how to invest offshore, and this one's for sophisticated people that already invest offshore and want to build a global portfolio. Some of the risks involved. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I sort of covered it already. In development projects, the one most important thing is actually execution risk. They actually have to finish the project. Okay, and things happen. Markets change, economies change, banks change. So it's something to be aware of there. And equally on the existing property side, please don't think that technology is a be-all and it's going to solve everything. Because coming back to the conversation we were having, if we buy this building and suddenly there's no tenants in the building and there's no income, well, we have to put money in, more money. Yep. So you need to make sure when you do your due diligence that you don't want to have what's called a capital call. So we do a huge amount to make sure that we can not let that happen. So as an example, we generally have about a 200% plus what's called interest rate cover. So if the interest rate is 10 Rand, we want to make sure the income is 20 Rand to allow us quite a lot of flexibility if interest rates go up. Is that fair? We also put money into accounts, like escrow accounts. We don't touch the money, but it's in an escrow account for what's called TI, tenant installation. So that if there's a cost to refit this building, we're not phoning you up and going, hey, dude, can you put some money in? We need to refurb a building. So these are the little things that are important to understand, because if you don't understand them, if you want to use us, don't use us, I don't care. But if you go speak to other people, just make sure you're asking the right questions. Is that fair? Because otherwise, these things can look really good on the front end. Political risk. A lot of people didn't see Brexit coming. Commercial property in London lost 20%. Will it recover? I don't know. Depends on your opinion of whether Brexit was good or bad for England. So the question is really, how do you protect yourself? And I fundamentally believe there's only really two things that you need. You need the right information and the right partners. Now, that gets quite interesting because, that's quite a wide thing. What is the right information? What are the right partners? The most important lesson that I learned around risk was what I learned from my uncle. And he said to me, Scott, work out what your worst case scenario is. And if you can manage that, then everything else is upside. It's quite an interesting way of looking at it. I was literally listening to a book, anyone that wants to start their own business. I was literally listening to a book this morning called The Gig Economy. And the lady literally said it to me this morning while I was running. Funny enough, the exact same thing. Work out what your worst case scenario is. So any risk you want to take in your life, work out what the worst case scenario is. And if you can manage that, then everything else is upside. Is that fair? Just a little bit of friendly advice. With the banks being downgraded, there's quite a good chance that interest rates are going to go up. And so maybe start working out what your worst case scenario is. If the interest rates go up, can you afford it? The other thing that's important, the question around the right information. So if I wanted to go to a good restaurant here in Cape Town, and I just asked all of you guys in the room where I should go, and everyone agreed that I should go to, I don't know, what's a good restaurant? Which one? Big Al's. Okay? Big Al's. Pig. I don't know where that is. By the way, I drove past the Pig the other day, which is where I used to go as a UCT student. But anyway, anyone else around my age would know what I'm talking about. But so wherever that place is, okay, that you just mentioned, if a lot of people who seem to know where it is and agree, if you all said it's a good place, can you agree it's probably a good place for my mom and I if I go to dinner? Yeah? So can we see that as the way the world's working, why do we trust the Uber driver? Why is a lady prepared to pick up a man in a car and drive them at night here in South Africa? Why is that? Accountability? Pardon? Being rated by the users. So it's pardon? Technology. So what technology is allowing us is, the fancy word is called social proofing. It's really, we as peers are saying to people, hey, we can trust this. Is that fair? So Airbnb is exactly the same. Why do we let people stay in our house? Well, because other people have said that they're good people. Why do we stay in other people's houses? Because other people have said that they're good people. So what I'm really excited about is that 10 years ago, the only way to get the right information was to go to the local estate agent. And then you had to really kind of just hope that they were giving you the right information. Is that fair? Now you can go on the internet and there's a plethora of information, but where do you even get started? Okay. But what I like is that now with this kind of social proofing is that more and more people are going, oh, but that actually makes sense. We can trust that information. Is that fair? I think the world is really going there. And the nice thing is on the right partners, exactly the same thing. Now, I'm not going to mention the name, although I should. But there's a developer here in this very city. And it's interesting because they have perfected the ability for a building to absorb water. Their buildings are built like sponges. They absorb water. Okay, I've owned properties in 2 of their buildings, and what's amazing is they've got a beautiful brand with the name water in their name, and every development they sell out because they've got beautiful branding and a big marketing launch. And unfortunately, all the suckers that bought the last development don't really have a voice. Am I right or wrong? Has the development market not worked like that for years, decades? The world's changing, ladies and gentlemen. Your digital track record's everything. If you tell someone that you're going to get a 6% return, and you don't get a 6% return, you're going to tell the world. But I tell you what, if you get a 6% or a 7%, and you give it a little like, and you do all the social proofing, do you realize that you can come along, and there's quite a good chance that, this person's going to be able to give you a 6 or 7% return. Do you see where this is going? I think it's really exciting now. It gives us all a lot more power to make the right decision. So something that's interesting for us as well, and we are literally prototyping this, so it's not built yet. But in this book, which is the second book I would recommend, called Upstarts. So this book has just come out in South Africa. It's a brand new book about the biography of Airbnb and Uber. Okay, so I don't know if the word biography is, Mom, is a biography for a company as well? I don't know what the right word is, but I tell you what, it's a fascinating book. And what was interesting, and I learned a trick here, was that, you know, when eBay had a problem, they came out with eBay Protect, and then Airbnb actually had someone ransack their house, and so they came out with Airbnb Protect. And we've had a long discussion between Henny and myself and everyone involved in the team, and we've kind of got two types of deals. We've got a level 1 deal and a level 2. Now that makes a lot of sense to you. I mean, what for you is a level 1 and level 2? I'm sure you have no idea, because no one has any idea. So just by thinking it through, I said to Henny and to the whole team doing due diligence, well, why don't we do the same thing? Because we've got this massive conflict. And what the conflict is that Henny and the whole investment committee and everything you're going to see from Willie now after the tea break is that, you know, they like certain buildings in certain areas, in certain cities, in certain markets. But now what do you do? I'm just using Henny, but let's just call it the investment committee. So what we've decided to do, and it's a work in progress, it's not finalized, but it's a work in progress, is where we're going to have something like wealth protection, and again, don't shoot me for the logo, and that's really what we refer to as our level 1 deals. And that, quite frankly, is our investment committee, and if they like Atlanta and Dallas, and those are the only 2 markets in the whole of America that we have property at level 1, then it's their choice, okay? And why are we calling it wealth protection? Well, we're going through a huge amount more work on due diligence, and we believe that we're doing our best to help people, you know, protect their wealth. However, the second level is open marketplace, and there might be buildings or places that people want to invest, and quite frankly, who are we to judge? When you go to a shopping center, some of you buy alcohol, some of you buy cigarettes, and some of you buy health foods. If I run the shop, is it really my job to judge? Not. It's just to make sure we got safe alcohol, safe cigarettes, and safe health foods. Do you see the logic? So for us on risk, I started off and I showed you, you've got income, and then you've got growth. Well, equally, you've got wealth protection, and then you've got open marketplace. And hopefully, we're going to get to a point quite soon where a project will have a big green tick on it, and then please don't come back to us one day and go, oh, but I thought this was medical. You see what I'm trying to get at? We're just trying to make it really easy for people to start to manage and understand risk for themselves. Okay, yep.
The marketplace is literally the investors deciding or pointing
Yeah, so look, you know, it's interesting. So a great story is that a lot of people, probably a lot of people in this room even, want to invest in London. Henny specifically hasn't wanted to invest in London for the last 3 or 4 years. One of our board members has just spent £500,000 in London. And I literally was like, guys, he's on our flipping board. Like, what I mean by that is that if people are going to invest in London, they're going to invest in London. Why don't we help them? We know people in London. We know people that can get safe returns. And if Martin's on our board wants to get a 3-4%, whatever he's getting, and then he's going to do it. He's going to do it with or without us. So, but all that we're doing now is that this breaks up because the way Henny works in his head, and it's right, is that safety is everything. And so why invest for 3-4% when I can get 8% in Atlanta? So he hasn't wanted to allow it through the investment committee. So all that we're saying now is, okay, if you want to do London, it's there. But if you want to do a medical building, it'll be there. Do you see what I mean? And there's no right and there's no wrong. It allows people to make the choices for themselves. Is that fair? Does that answer your question? Yep.
Scott, I just wanted to add on to that. In terms of the open market, the actual partner on the ground will have due diligence against them. So this isn't going to be a free-for-all frickie from the Free State who's never built a thing in his life is just going to be able to put something on the marketplace. So I think that just needs to be made clear.
of how that works. Okay, so these are things you need to be careful of. This one I spoke of a little bit earlier. I'm just conscious of the time for tea, but I spoke about the shopping centers. So literally, shopping centers in America are going bankrupt because of technology. Anyone think that technology is coming here, e-commerce, to Africa? So I think Naspers just invested 960 million in, was it Kalahari or Take a Lot. It's starting to really happen. So what was interesting is in Durban, I think, someone said, well, then it's obvious. Then we should buy warehouses. And then Kevin popped up and he said, yeah, but what about 3D printing? So we'll talk about that this afternoon, okay? But no, but it gets really interesting, okay? So last year, I asked Henny and Hilda to go to exponential medicine. So what you're going to learn from Willem this afternoon, but specifically for the medical space. Why do you think I asked them to do that? Because we've got a whole lot of medical buildings, and I don't want some fancy gadget that we don't need doctors anymore. Seriously, think about it. Okay? Autonomous cars, so I mentioned it earlier. Henny's actually got a garage near his Pretoria hospital that makes some beautiful cash flow. But garages are going to be redundant, because when we have autonomous cars, no one's going to need to park a car. No one, not one person. We go to T is what we call portfolio strategy. And why this is important is that a lot of people, I get asked this all the time, they say to me, Scott, is medical 7 better or worse than medical 8? And I tend to find a couple of different types of people, but quite often there's people that, I tell you what, I'm not going to invest in medical 8 because medical 9 might be better. And what I find is that a lot of people, they're trying to wait for that jackpot investment where they can literally just put it all in and win. And remember what we learned earlier about the 15 uncorrelated bets? So for me, one of the things that I tried to do with my wife is rather have the discipline to just invest, even if it's a small amount, in every deal. Because for me, I'm then starting to, A, get the discipline, which I think is the most important thing, and the consistency, and it kind of brings in some diversification anyway. Does that make sense? So what that means is that you're going to hear from Willie now after the tea break. And Willie is an ex-investment banker. And what he did is he did the maths. And he said, well, if I invest $1,000 for the next 16 years, and he just looked at 2 investments we had at the time. One was the multifamily, so that was Cyprus. And the other one was Medical 7, which was a medical building. And if you average about an 8% return, which is what they both are paying, and about 20% in capital growth, which is both what they're getting. Over the next 16 years, so what that basically means, even though the investments might only have a 5-year term, it's just that you keep reinvesting. Does that make sense? You're not taking stuff out. And what was interesting is that over a 16-year period, the one would have you just short of $2 million, so the medical, and the multifamily would have you just short of just on $3 million. Now, one that was more personal to me, so last year when they were having the fees must fall, it came pretty obvious to me that John T wouldn't be going to UCT. And what I mean by that is I loved going to UCT. It was one of the best 4 years of my entire life. But I don't think he's going to be coming to UCT. I don't think he's going to be going to Stellenbosch either, by the way. So what I did look at was, well, what would it cost me to send him to an average university in Australia, America, and England? So, and by the way, guys, I'm going to put these slides on SlideShare. So if you want to save some effort, then just go. So anyway, I've done the work. And then if you want to go to Melbourne, Harvard, and Oxford, which arguably is, Melbourne's the best in Asia, Harvard's the best in America, and Oxford's the best in England. So, and then your kid is going to drink and party and need a house as well. So there's more than just the tuition. So, and then I worked on 4 years, because if they fail a year, they must pay for themselves. So it's just 4 years. And then I took an exchange rate just to put it all in dollars. And effectively, it came up with an amount. So to go to an average Australian university, you need 100. Quarterly basis, even yearly basis, what goal am getting over the top of the mountain? I want to have a bit of cover. Medical buildings at 8%, that means I need roughly $2.5 million worth of assets, and I'll be getting $15,000 a month easily. Now, coming back to the global citizen thing we spoke of, can we see that that's the kind of the mindset around the global citizen? Because you can now choose. Do I want to live in Australia? Do I want to live in America? Do I want to live in South Africa? Doesn't make any difference. $15,000, it'll get you by. I think you'll get by. Do you see? That's fair. Okay, so this for me is really what I mean by this portfolio strategy in terms of how you get there. Now, we're going to break for tea, but before we do, I'd like, we've got 7 minutes until tea. I would like everyone just to discuss a little bit, just talk to the person next to you around what does portfolio strategy mean? Like, what would it mean to you? Because can you remember this morning we started off very clearly saying, what do I want out of today? And the more clear you get out of what is your objective, and call it whatever you like, portfolio strategy, call it whatever you like, but the more clear you get on what you want, then you can work backwards as to what you have to do to get to where you want to get to. Does that make sense? So just take, you can use the same groups, you can change groups you want. Just take 2-3 minutes, just chat, because I really want you to make this personal for you. You've heard personally for me what's important to me, but it's not important to you what's important to me. What's important to you is important to you. Does that make sense? So just quickly, just spend a little bit of time just sharing basically what you think about it. If you don't have all the numbers now, I don't care. That's the task for later. Getting more efficient. Huh? Yeah. Getting more efficient, dude. I don't know, what have I missed out on? That's why recording the last one is always the best. Because you always just get more efficient in terms of how one thing leads into the next. No, it's coming. It's coming. Okay. So I'm going to break and then I can get people back at, I'll break at 1:45 and I'll get them back at 11. Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we're on Q&A. Yeah. Yeah.
How does crowdfunding a property work? Is it possible? Okay, I mean, that's
Cool. Okay. Oh, yeah, stop. Thanks so much, Jenny. Cheers. See, the other thing when you rush is that you don't get this sort of interaction. And this is actually what I remember when I would do Roger stuff, this is when you remember, because you really kind of, what does it mean to me? And you know what's always I find hard as a presenter is you want to get going again, but actually you just need to let them talk, No, it's awesome. Please jump in, dude. I mean, I do it to Willem. I love it when you do it. It makes it more interactive as well. So please, the more anything, just jump in. Even just ask the questions, whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, in fact, Kevin, I actually prefer it because it makes it flow better. So guys, sorry to interrupt. I'm quite intrigued and excited by all the conversation. It means that at least something settled or sunk in. I wanted to actually break for tea, so I thought we can continue the conversations over tea. And just quickly before we do break for tea, anyone want to share any insights there? Because there was a huge amount of talking, which was awesome. But anyone want to share anything? Like anything that you think might be valuable to someone else? Yep.
Which is interesting for me that I was very clear on my rand bills, and in the last 2 years I'm very clear on my dollar bills.
Okay.
Seeing that kind of switch.
Cool. For me, it's critical. I tend to say to my friends, a lot of them say, yeah, but why invest overseas? And I tend to say to them, well, guys, doesn't matter what it is. It can be $15,000. It can be $5. If I'm getting that per month, and South Africa booms, I live in South Africa, and if it fails, I move overseas. So I basically go to the casino and I win on red and black. Okay. Whereas you're telling me that you only make money if South Africa booms. Okay, well, it's a bit of a risky strategy. So, for me, it's not betting on or against South Africa. It's just being, clever, actually. So I fundamentally think it's really important, So very valuable. Anyone else? Yeah?
I think when you talk about partners, one of the most important ones is your bankers. Because if you come in as a total stranger, you're going to really be skinned at the interest rate you've got to borrow to invest. So when you talk about your partners, I think the bankers are.
So that's an interesting thing that Lynn's saying. I mean, we learned a very hard lesson in America. Because when we arrived in America, and I'll talk about America after the tea break, but we were told, oh, don't worry, you'll get your credit rating in about a year, and then you'll be able to get bank credit, bank debt, okay? But in the short term, don't worry, we've got this like really quite expensive short-term debt, but don't worry, you'll get the bank debt. Well, it's like four to 5 years later, we still haven't been able to get the bank debt, okay? So now suddenly the returns aren't as attractive because you're paying, call it mezz debt type financing. So that's exactly what Lynn's talking about. Then the commercial side is done very differently because on the commercial side, you're dealing with partners on the ground using their track record to get debt from the banks. And they're borrowing like 3.5%. Okay, like we as South Africans are borrowing at 9.5% to 12%. Can you see the difference that makes on your end return? Even on the residential properties, oh, and just by the way, if you didn't see the email that went out this morning, anyone that owns a residential property, there's a webinar on Tuesday night. And one of the reasons we're putting all the properties together is that when it's one house, the banks see it as residential. When it's 100 houses, it's a commercial loan. Rules of the game change. So it's very important what you're saying. I agree with you. One last before we break for tea. Yep.
Well, as you mentioned with the credit rating, I participated in that credit builder thing in obviously wasn't that successful. And what we recently tried, as you mentioned, purchase power, you do it together, one
Yep.
pool. And locally we simply went and created a local PTY with 20 shares, but instead of purchasing your share with once with capital lump sum, you buy your share over 10 years with monthly premium.
Exactly.
The first year, a little syndication.
Yep.
And that enables you, based on our projection with 50% deposit on each property, 50% bond mortgage, to purchase about 200 properties over a 10-year period. And obviously you tell the guys then if they get out too soon, you can buy the share back or less. But will you be able to purchase on your own, let's say that 200 properties divided by the 20 shareholders, that equals 10 properties over a 10-year period, most of them very close to paid off with the rental income and decent return. Obviously you won't be able to do that, so that you can pay off 2 properties with a small amount of 5,000 rand per share per month. Now I would like to do that in the States, for example, or offshore. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the States. But my problem is most people I talk to, I don't hang around with Sir Richard Branson, that league yet. So the investors are restricted to $500 to $2,000 contribution per month. So if you use a similar structure, 20 shares at $500 per share. So you can own as much of the company you want, but you're purchasing a share at $500 per month over a 10-year period. How would you structure it? Would it be a local
So it's since 2002. Literally, buying houses in London and wanting people to participate. Doesn't matter what country. There's a whole bunch of reasons why lawyers tell you it's not possible. It is possible. We built the technology, and it is possible now. So I want to leave you with one thought, and I'm not dismissing it because I think it's actually the whole focus for this afternoon, was that my last thought was the whole morning I've really more spoken about the upside. Is that fair? Talking about portfolio and how you make money and what are your lofty goals and how do you want to get there. What was the number one thing that we learned this morning about the 4 keys to wealth? What was the very first principle? Don't lose money. So what we're going to do after tea, and we're going to break now, literally it's 1:45, it was 1:45, but anyway, and we're going to get going again at 11:05. Very quickly, at 11:05 for 15 minutes, I'm going to be explaining Clem Santa and GIDS 1. So our whole scenario planning and our due diligence under GIDS 1, okay, our global investment due diligence system. If you're a wealth partner, if you've been on a webinar, if you've seen it 400 times and could do the presentation better than me, then enjoy the coffee outside and, send a WhatsApp, phone or do a work call or something. And then let me just get my maths right, 11:05. At 11:20, Villy will come up and he's going to be going into GIDS 2, which I recommend none of you miss because it's literally brand new. It came up literally as of last Thursday in Joburg. We did it in Durban and now today in Cape Town. So no one's ever seen it before, including me, until last Thursday. So I'd highly recommend not missing that. So we're going to break now.